the principle of when an injunction binding non-parties, which was never done in this country before the 1960s. And let's see the chart, the Trump chart, which was done really only once Trump came into office for the first time. You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit strange?
A very plausible explanation, Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
You don't think this was never used before the 1960s, and suddenly Democrat judges decide we love the nationwide injunction, and then when Biden comes to office, no, actually.
It's Republican appointees as well, Senator, and the 1960s is where some scholars sort of locate the beginning of this.
Can you identify one before then?
Mila Sahoni, who's another scholar of universal injunction, suggests 1913 is actually the first, and others in the 20s.
The Republic endured for 150 years before there was a nationwide injunction.
Well, the federal government was doing a lot less until 100 years ago. So, there's many things that have changed in the last 100 or the last 50 years.
So long as it is a Democrat president in office, then we should have no nationwide injunctions. If it's a Republican president, then this is absolutely fine, warranted, and called for. How can our system of law survive on those principles, Professor?
I think a system in which there are no meaningful constraints on the president is a very dangerous system.
That's Kate Shaw, co-host of the Strict Scrutiny podcast, giving Josh Hawley a quick lesson in basic logic and common sense. Hawley, among other Republicans, has decided that an unprecedented number of nationwide injunctions against this president means that the courts are stacked against him and just one more instance of the weaponization of government against dear leader Donald Trump, as opposed to the more logical reason, which is that Donald Trump is getting dealt more nationwide injunctions by the courts because he is doing more lawless things that the courts have to stop. Logic. What does it mean? And let's be clear, this isn't the first time that this tortured brand of reason has emerged in defense of Trump. Remember how we spent the entirety of the campaign while Donald Trump was contending with his prosecutions, listening to Republicans claim that these prosecutions were examples of the weaponization of government. J.D. Vance would tweet, "Biden is attacking the most likely 2024 opponent. He's using the justice system to preemptively steal the 2024 election. This is what's happening, plain and simple." Tucker Carlson said, "This won't stop Trump. He'll win the election if he's not killed first, but it does mark the end of the fairest justice system in the world. Anyone who defends this verdict is a danger to you and your family." In fact, this talking point was ubiquitous across the right.
Beware, in the weaponized Biden criminal justice system, well, political differences are now considered especially heinous. And if New York's powerful Democrats hate your politics, well, a prison cell might well be in your future or some kind of conviction for something, well, that they make up. Without a second thought, well, these Democrats, they'll make up a crime, conduct a show trial, rig a conviction with a hand-picked Biden-donating judge, regardless of the evidence, if they could even explain it.
I called President Trump and told him I wanted to be here myself to call out what is a travesty of justice, and I think everybody around the country can see that. This is the fifth week that President Trump has been in court for this sham of a trial. They are doing this intentionally to keep him here and keep him off of the campaign trail. And I think everybody in the country can see that for what it is.
This is a politicized persecution that is nakedly apparent. This is a sham. This is not the United States of America. This is some third-rate banana republic. If this were happening in another country, we would be laughing at them as a sham democracy. I am ashamed as an American citizen.
You have a prosecutor who is ignoring crimes happening every single day in his jurisdiction, and he chooses to go back many, many years ago to try to use something about porn star hush money payments. You know, that's an example of pursuing a political agenda.
Lawfare at its finest, or at its worst.
Yes, it must be weaponized government, and definitely not the fact that this president simply committed more crimes. Definitely not the fact that this president committed campaign finance violations and stole classified documents from the White House and refused to return them, and tried to interfere with the certification of a free and fair election, and engaged in a racketeering scheme in Georgia. Nope. Any effort to hold him to account for his own actions is simply evidence of a weaponized government, and he bears no responsibility for his own actions whatsoever. And so, in effect, it is actually impossible to hold Donald Trump to account for anything, because if you try, then it's automatically another example of weaponized government at the hands of the communist, Marxist, leftist Democrats. So, Trump can commit crimes with impunity, and if you even try to hold him responsible for his own actions, in fact, you're the one who's corrupt. Heads I win, tails you lose. In reality, it's easier for these Republicans to pretend that Donald Trump being held to account for his own criminality is somehow the fault of the left because they need some excuse to be able to explain away his corruption while trying to keep their own hands clean. They, of course, don't want to have to answer for his administration's illegal orders, his administration's attempt to eliminate due process, his administration defying court rulings, his administration firing people they don't have the authority to fire, his administration shutting down agencies they don't have the authority to shutter, his administration withholding funds that were already allocated duly by Congress. And so it's just easier for the Republican Party to take all of those things in aggregate and pretend that it's all just evidence of a weaponized justice system. Of course, that's undermined by a couple of points. First, there have been at least 8 judges who Trump himself appointed who have ruled against him with these nationwide injunctions. So to believe Hawley's talking point, that would mean that even Trump appointees are part of a grand conspiracy against the very guy who gave them their jobs. And the second point is that we can all plainly see Trump's lawlessness. I get that Josh Hawley wants us to get lost in the minutia of his argument and the intricacies of his details, but when Trump tries to ban birthright citizenship, for example, the reason that there were 3 nationwide injunctions is because birthright citizenship is guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution. In fact, here's the plain text. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So I would love for someone to ask Josh Hawley whether he thinks an injunction against an executive order that directly refutes the plain text of the Constitution is well-founded, or if that too is somehow evidence of a weaponized government. Starting to understand why Hawley's blind defense of Trump's illegality is so stupid? Hawley's partisan hackery is so blatant, so extreme, that it's clouding his ability to have even an ounce of critical thinking. And yet, that's what it takes to succeed in today's GOP. As long as you'll cast aside every bit of dignity, of integrity, and of honesty in deference to Donald Trump, you can fail all the way to the top. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.